fade green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place.
Ready?
This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Let's go. Go.
Yes, you Eagle insiders. Appreciate you jumping in with us. At least a couple of believed to be Eagle insiders. Jody McDonald and John McMullen going to be hanging with you for the next couple hours right here on Birds 365, or at least I am. I'm not sure what happened to Johnny Mack. He disappeared. He and I were talking a little football, a little wrestling before the show started. McMullen was there. We run the open and poof, McMullen disappears. Goes into the netherworld. I'm sure he'll be back momentarily. Probably a
man. Whoa.
What do? You push a button that you aren't supposed to push?
I got the dreaded green screen of death. I thought it was over for me, man. The computer just went green. I said, but I rebooted and I'm back. So hopefully, who knows? Wow, that was crazy.
Now we got to read into this whole show as to what it means to our conversation about the Eagles schedule, because that is the number one conversation of the day. Eagles made no moves, no signings, no releases. Andre Sachere, appreciate you, buddy. Yeah, best of luck finding another job in the league. That was yesterday. No, Eagles schedule will be released in total later on this afternoon, but the leakages started yesterday. And prior to you and I going off the air here on Birds 365, we already knew a couple of Eagle games. We now know one more. As per Mama Kelsey, Donna, the mom of Jason and Travis, the Eagles and the Chiefs will be playing week 2, not week 1, not the NFL opening game on the Thursday night to get the season underway, but week 2, as per Mama Kelsey. And by the way, Donna, you got to do it a little bit better with your leaking information. We don't know if it's a 1 o'clock game or a 4 o'clock game or a Sunday night game or even a Monday night game that week. All she said was week 2. Come on, you got to be better with the details, Mama Kelsey. But we do know the Eagles and Chiefs are playing week 2, details to follow. And we found out while the show was on, Johnny Mack spotted it on social media or somebody texted him and said, Christmas Day, Eagles and Giants. That game will be here in Philadelphia. So Johnny Mack to cover it, doesn't have to go up the Jersey Turnpike, make it home a little bit better for eggnog purposes later in the evening. That game will be at Lincoln Financial Field as a 4:25 start. So that's 2 of the 17 games the Eagles will be playing in the books. And we got a third, and that would be the championship rematch from the NFC. The 49ers will be coming to town week 13. So that's early December. The 49ers should have Brock Purdy back by then. At least that you were last week doubting that Brock Purdy can be back by the first month of the season. You will admit that you believe Brock Purdy will be back by the December 3rd rematch, right?
Yeah, that's a big. By the way, I think my guy, Kyle Shanahan, was trumping up your guy, Brock Purdy, that he'll be back by training camp. So maybe he could have had the Eagles in Portland. I don't believe that for a second. I think my guy's lying, but But yeah, by that point, he should be back. The question is, I'm on record. I think Sam Darnold's going to be the starting quarterback in San Francisco. I'm going down that route. And I think they're trying to hype up.
When you say that, you mean all year?
Yeah, I mean all year, because I think we talked about it with Rob Motti. They're good, and they're going to win, and they're going to win early, and they're going to win in the mid, and they're going to win late. And I think he's going to be on the field early. And I think they're going to win games. And I said, when we had Rob on, it's easy. If you're 2-3, 2-4, it's easy. You just go back to Brock Purdy. But if you're 5-1, if you're 6-0, how do you pull the plug on that? I don't think you pull the plug on that. So that's my thought process behind that. Not that I love Sam Darnold. I just think it's going to work out that way because of the injury, and it's going to be tough to sit him down. And then from the standpoint of saying Brock's going to be ready in training camp, I think that's to try to generate interest in Trey Lance, to try to move him, because if you got a third string, what are you going to get for a third string quarterback? So they're trying to pump it up as much as possible to get as much back for a sunk cost as they possibly can. That's my conspiracy theory on the whole situation. But and real quick, I would argue, Jody, that there's a bigger thing today than the schedule for the Eagles, and that's Sean Desai and Brian Johnson are finally going to speak as coordinators in the case of Brian Johnson, with Sean Desai for the first time to the Philly media. So that to me is a bigger substantive part of today. But I know I'm on an island. I know nobody cares about the real stuff.
No, and they should. I think your suggestion about what is the most important thing to talk about the Eagles today is well worth it. Well, we can't really do it, but tomorrow it'll be all about the Eagles coordinators. Finally, the media gets a chance to ask some questions of them. So that certainly be the conversation tomorrow. I'm just a little surprised. You think the 49ers are going to take 40 cents on the dollar on Trey Lance?
Because what are you going to do? You got to get something, right? I mean, you're moving in another direction, pretty clear. What are you going to do? Just keep the guy? I don't know. You're collecting quarterbacks. I haven't brought up Brent. They got like 5 quarterbacks. That tells me they don't have a lot of confidence in Trey Lance, because I said it way earlier when it's, as again, UCL injury, pretty clear Brock's not going to be there week 1. So to me, it was an opportunity. It was a golden opportunity to basically just throw Lance out there and see what happens. And if he takes off, great, perfect situation. That would be the optimal situation, to be honest, for John Lynch, at least. That would be the optimal situation. If he doesn't, you just go back to Brock Purdy when he's ultimately healthy. It was a perfect situation for John Lynch. And it doesn't seem like they're going to go in that direction. It seems like to me they're going to go in the Sam Darnold direction.
Quick question. Aren't you the one who tells me you can read a lot into what kind of contract the guy signs as a free agent?
Yeah, I don't think they think Sam Darnold's the long-term answer. I think they think he's the guy early in the season. From there, I take they're going to win games. That's the problem. On a typical team, right, he's going to play poorly, like he did in Carolina. You've been through it with the Jets. He's going to lose games. It's easy. When you're winning games, it's hard to pull a plug on the guy. That's my point. That's my point.
Yeah, I do not see Sam Darnold as the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Certainly not week 13 when they come here to Philadelphia to play. By then, it certainly will be Brock Purdy. And if it's not Brock Purdy, I gave you the
scenario.
I don't think
I gave you to Rob. If they're 5-1, are you benching them?
I think if they're 5-1, it's going to be with Trey Lance as their quarterback. I don't think they're going to play Sam Darnold.
That's fair point. Are you benching Trey Lance if they're 5-1? I think it's even less likely they bench Trey Lance. I think My whole standpoint is I think they're sort of trying to turn the page on Trey Lance. That's just my thought. I have no idea. I'm not reporting it. That's just my thought. But to me, it's even less likely that you bench Trey Lance at 5-1 than you bench Sam Darnold at 5-1.
Well, we don't. It's pure speculation on your part, my part, anybody's part, as to when Brock Purdy's going to come back. I think that, yes, the coach is putting out their best case scenario, which isn't really realistic scenario as to when he's going to return. We don't know. Maybe Brock Purdy never makes it back. And then you got to go the entire season with a quarterback other than the guy who went undefeated when he filled in for you last year in games that he started 8-0, including playoffs before he got hurt against the Eagles. Yeah, maybe he doesn't play a game. So you have to keep all options and contingencies open. I would suggest that Sam Darnold is down the list. Both Brock Purdy and Trey Lance are ahead of Sam Darnold. I think if they could get a fair trade for Sam Darnold without having to scrape tons of egg off their face.
Trey, yeah.
What I say?
Trey Lance. Sam. They're not going to trade Sam, obviously. There's not. But yeah, there have been rumors. There have been, sort of hints that they're trying to move on from Trey Lance. So most of it's based on that. I thought, hey, that's the better situation, like I said, for John Lynch. Just let Trey Lance, give him one more shot, let him see if he can play. And if he can't play, for sure. And then you just go back to Brock Purdy. But they went through the reverse of this last year. If you remember, Jody, there were a lot of people saying, is Jimmy going to be ready? Is Jimmy Garoppolo going to be ready? And I said the exact same thing. They're not benching Brock Purdy if he keeps winning games. It doesn't matter if Jimmy Garoppolo was coming back at any point and he wasn't healthy enough. They never had to go down that bridge. But every week there were, is Jimmy Garoppolo, even the NFC Championship game. Is Jimmy Garoppolo going to be ready? You're not benching a guy who's not losing games.
Anybody who said that going into the NFC Championship game must have touched down from another planet, because Brock Purdy was 8-0 at that point. So anybody who was rooting for foolishly believed that Jimmy G was going to jump in and start in front instead of Brock Purdy.
But just I'm sure you saw the stories that there were people talking.
John, you get some really desperate writers who can't come up with a decent story. Oh, I could write a story about Jimmy G retaking the quarterback because he was at one time. Have you been watching the 49ers play the last 8 weeks?
Yeah, as I said, we're Birds 365, so we got to get back to the Eagles. You're a Brock Purdy guy. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying it works both ways. I said at the time, I'm not a Brock Purdy guy, but I said at the time, they're not benching a guy who's not losing games. They're not benching a guy, period, until he loses a game. Then it's a little bit easier, especially as a rookie. Same thing, reversal. Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, could be Brandon Allen. If they're 5-1, 6-0, they're not benching the guy. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
And again, we're going to agree to disagree. I think they have a much higher opinion of Brock Purdy, certainly than you do. And I think they will be building it to get Brock Purdy back whenever he becomes available. And he will not be sitting for Sam Darnold. If Brock Purdy is healthy, no matter what their record is, Sam Darnold will not stay as their starting quarterback, is my opinion. All right, Eagles. The other game that we found out about yesterday, in addition to the two we found out about early, was Christmas Day against the Giants, and much to John McMullen's chagrin, a 4:25 start. Johnny's rooting for those 1 o'clock start.
Terrible.
You're sitting on an 0 for 3 there, big guy. There has not been a 1 o'clock start announced yet. We will get the rest of the starts today, which, oh, by the way, this is much like the NFL draft, at least the way it's being reported. Both the NFL Network and ESPN will have draft shows starting at 8 o'clock tonight for the quote-unquote major reveal of the entire schedule. Which of the two networks you going to be watching?
What are the Sixers on?
Yeah, the Sixers are on, I think it's TNT.
Yeah, whatever network the Sixers are on. No, I'm not.
Yeah, come on. Birds 365 guys going to be watching the Sixers at 8 o'clock tonight.
Well, I get, I'll get the schedule and all the information sent to me, so I'm not worried about watching a bunch of knuckleheads talk. I got to talk about it. I consider myself a knucklehead. Yeah, I'll be watching far more important things than people talking about the NFL schedule. But yeah, I had luck.
Week 9, the Commanders come to town, and can the Eagles get revenge from last year's loss?
An astonishing, I will say, an astonishing amount of people watch it. But I do think in Philadelphia, typically, I do think more people are going to be interested in the Sixers than the Eagles schedule, and that's kind of rare this time of year, to be honest. Because usually the writing's on the wall for the Sixers. They got a real good opportunity. I mean, if you look, you hate to look ahead, Jody, but I mean, everything's set up for them in the Eastern Conference Finals if they're able to get over this hump, which is still a big if, because if they don't win tonight, they're up against it. Yeah, far more important aspect of but people love the Eagles. The Eagles rule this town. They're still going to be very, very interested. But I do think they're going to get less viewers in Philadelphia than normal, is how I would say it.
I would agree with that. And shoot, even last night went well with the Knicks pushing the Heat in extra games, so that those two teams will be going a little further than the Sixers and the Celtics, pushing it to a game 6. So things are lining up well for the Sixers. All right, one last question before we punch up our first guest. Mike Sealski, lead sports columnist for the Inquirer, is going to join us this weekend after the schedule's released tonight, and you're doing the back and forth, watching the Sixers tablet thing, getting all the info, prep for Birds 365 tomorrow morning. And after you've written the 92 articles you got to write about the two Eagle coordinators.
That's the problem.
After you get all that done this weekend, will you be donning your Zero Swift jersey to go see Taylor Swift across the river?
Swiftie? I saw the Swifties were lined up at 6 a.m. for there's some kind of merchandise thing going on. Those people are loyal, but no. Hey, I'm not. I don't buy.
You're not going to be attended. You're not going to be wearing your DeAndre. I can fake that it's Taylor Swift Zero jersey to a concert this weekend. I got caught when I don't know if I ever told you this story. UFC was at Wells Fargo Center. I was covering it. This is years ago. And on the same day, there was a Taylor Swift concert next door at Lincoln Financial Field. And I got there, pretty early for the UFC thing. And there's all teenage girls walking around, dressed to the nines, and I'm saying to myself, what the hell is going on? It's UFC. What is going on here? I had no idea that Taylor Swift was across the street. And I paid for it at the end of the nights. Oh, did I pay for it? I've never had a more difficult time getting out of the sports complex in my life. Getting out at the same time down there in South Philadelphia.
No, it wasn't even the same time, because trust me, I was late. UFC goes late, and those people were hanging around.
They're just hanging around afterwards. All right, 2 hours after the end of Taylor Swift, they're going nowhere fast. All right, we're going down to Texas next. I see that Mike Sealski is in the green room, ready to hop on with us. He's out of town, but he's up early to talk to us. We couldn't appreciate it any more than we do. We'll talk schedule and coordinators for the Philadelphia Eagles next with Mike Sealski here on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
the greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
This is Governor Ed Rendell urging you to vote for my friend Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court. I appointed Judge Dugan in 2007 to the Philadelphia Municipal Court, where he now serves as its president judge. Pat is a proud Army veteran of 23 years. He served 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's also recommended by the Philadelphia Bar Association. But most importantly, he bleeds Eagles green and hates those Dallas Cowboys. So get out and vote for number 3, Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court.
Paid for by Dugan 2023.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You got Birds 365 streaming in. We appreciate you joining it, as we appreciate Mike Sealski joining us from Amarillo, Texas, which that's got to be the first question I ask you. What are you doing in Amarillo, Mikey?
Good morning, guys. I am, last night I was reporting stuff about the Flyers' new president of hockey operations, Keith Jones. And today I am spending the day doing research and reporting for my next book. One of the gentlemen who is credited with dunking a basketball for the first time is a guy named Joe Fortenberry, who was a member of the 1936 U.S. Olympic team. And he lived most of his life in and around Amarillo, Texas. So I'm down here to speak to his son and talk to people about him, and then fly back up to Philly tomorrow.
The great Joe Fortenberry. You know, I told Jody that I was going to bring up Terry Funk because Terry Funk is huge in Amarillo. So and I'm a wrestling nerd, and Jody, by the way, Mike was. Oh, Sealski's not going to get that reference, and you probably don't because I'm a nerd. But I said, don't dismiss Mike. I remember if you want something interesting to read, Mike did a big piece on Joe Saboldi back in the day.
Yeah, I did.
A couple years ago.
Yep.
And it was interesting. Notre Dame football star, pro wrestling champion. OSS, for people that don't know, is the forerunner of the CIA. So essentially, he was an American spy. So very interesting story. So Mike knows a little bit about pro wrestling.
I a tiny bit, John. I have no idea who Terry Funk is. I assumed he was a member, like he was a musician or something.
I knew you wouldn't get Terry Funk. But,
yeah,
you might get Terry Funk from Roadhouse. He was also.
That's true. That's right. That's right. Grand Funk, I know.
Yeah,
Grand Funk, but not Terry Funk.
And for your next greatest funks, put Terry in Grand
That's
Funk.
right. The updated national funk rankings.
All right. Mike Sealski down in Amarillo, but staying on top of things here in Philadelphia. Have you had a discussion yet with the rest of the Sealski clan? What times will gifts be opened on Christmas morning, since you're going to need to be down at Lincoln Financial Field a little later on in the afternoon? Are you and the wife getting up at the crack of dawn to make sure the kids get all their gifts ahead of time, because Dad's got to go?
Yeah, I traded texts with my wife about this yesterday, Jody, and I'm not just saying this because this affects my life as somebody who covers the Eagles. I hate this. I hate that the NFL is playing a game at 4:30 on Christmas afternoon when Christmas is a Monday. I'm sorry. No. This is not a day. These are not circumstances that the NFL needs to be injecting itself into the lives of hundreds of millions of people. It's Christmas. You don't have to own every single day. I'm sorry, you don't. And I really don't like this at all. I'm of a mind to write a column about it. Technically I'm on vacation, but I suppose I could anyway, because I hate the idea of this. I hate what it's going to do to families. It's enough that, the league had been inching this way anyway. I get that there are going to be some hardcore Eagles and football fans who are going to say, oh, this makes the day better. It doesn't. I'm sorry, but it doesn't. So I don't like it.
Now, here's my concern, Mike, when you talk about Christmas Day, because they've kind of stolen it away from the NBA after the last couple of years. Christmas 2024, I believe, is going to be on a Wednesday. Would they dare go that route to start bringing in we got Black Friday football? Are we going to get Christmas Wednesday football down the road because they want that day?
Yes, I have no doubt that we're going to get
really
that. None. The NFL is pointed toward football 7 days a week. They are. I really believe that. I really believe that. And they will. I guarantee I would bet my life there are people in the NFL offices already working on a way to get football on Wednesdays. And Christmas Wednesday would be a perfect time to test drive it. Look, we've already got football on Thursdays. We've already got it.
Yeah.
And part of what makes the NFL great and why everybody's interested in it is its scarcity. It is once a week with your team. The games really, really matter. There's only 17 of them. And now it's counteracting itself. The scarcity, it's taking away the scarcity. And, it's the act of a bully. It's the act of an institution that thinks it can just do whatever it wants to do. And I don't know any other way to respond to it other than saying I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm going to take Diet Coke off your hands. You said you'd bet anything. I'm going to bet you Diet Coke. They're not going there yet. Not till Wednesday. Sunday, Monday, maybe even a Thursday. If Christmas is falling on a Thursday, you get Amazon Plus. Oh, by the way, Amazon, we're going to add another game to you to make it a doubleheader. No, they're not going to go to.
Well, we'll see. You may be right, Jody, but we'll see down the road.
Right. In my lifetime, maybe. Certainly in your kid's lifetime, there's going to be Wednesday NFL football, but not just yet today. By the way, the kids pissed at Uncle Jody because I didn't give him the exacta on the Kentucky Derby last week. My horses ran second and third. They were damn close, but I did not cash for your son.
By the way, Jody, I had like 10 people ask me, did you ask Jody for Kentucky Derby info? And I didn't. And so I got lambasted by a lot of people for that.
My two horses ran second and third, so it proves at least I've got some semblance of knowledge as to what I'm talking about.
Man knows. Jody Mack knows.
I didn't make enough money. I needed to make more money. All right, let's get back to making money, talking birds. Christmas Day, we know it's the Giants here in town. The San Francisco 49ers coming in later in the season, NFC rematch on the week 13 of the year, early December. John and I were just debating before you joined us as to who will be the 49ers quarterback by that time. Now, a lot of it is going to be tied into what the hell is their record on December 3rd. But if you were speculating today, who will be the starting quarterback for the 49ers? And will it lead to whining of 49er fans that it's unfair that they have to play the Eagles with this other person with whoever happens to be the quarterback?
Can I guess John Brody or Steve Bono?
Steve Bono.
He's a Philly guy, right?
Yeah, Norristown zone.
Yeah, Norristown. UCLA, Steve
That's
Bono.
right. That's right. I'm going to guess it's Trey Lance. I don't think anybody wants to trade for Trey Lance. I know the 49ers have floated that idea out there. I'm just going to guess that Brock Purdy or whoever else might be starting by then is beat up, or I'm just going to say at some point the 49ers have to see what this guy who they traded up a boatload to get with the third pick in the draft has got. And there's enough all around the rest of their roster to say that it's Trey Lance.
Now it's only, let's see, it's 8:30 here, Mike, 7:30 where you are. I want to give Eagles fans credit because I haven't gotten it yet. I'm sure I'll get it some point during the day. The disrespect shown by the NFL for not putting them in the season opener, which is going to be, of all people, the Detroit Lions facing the Kansas City Chiefs. Strange, a little bit of a projection. There certainly seem to be on board with what we all think is an up-and-coming Detroit team. But, if it turns into 31-7 in the third quarter, they're going to hear about it. No Eagles Chiefs. Is that disrespect by that horrible NFL toward the Philadelphia Eagles?
John, you know this. Jody, you know this. It's not disrespect. It's logic and economics. It's the first game of the season. The defending champs get to play on opening night, and you can put just about any other team on there, and you're going to get eyeballs for that game. And so the Detroit Lions are perceived to be an up-and-coming team. And so, they've got a bit of a curiosity factor. And let's see how they can do on a big stage against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce and the Chiefs. So I'm not surprised by this. I don't think anybody should. It's not about disrespect. It's about what games are going to be big no matter what. And you don't need to waste, for lack of a better way of putting it, Eagles Chiefs on the opening night of the season when everybody's going to be watching anyway.
All right. So when do you think, if Mrs. Kelce is right and the Eagles and Chiefs are week number 2, what is the advantageous position there? Why would you, if it's a Super Bowl rematch, it's going to be the Super Bowl, even if they play in December, it's still the Super Bowl rematch. Why do you think they went week 2 if Donna Kelce is right?
Well, it's the Super Bowl rematch, Jody, but the Super Bowl rematch in week 2 is a lot more promising, I think, than the Super Bowl rematch in week 11 in December, because by December, who knows? Maybe Patrick Mahomes is hurt. Maybe Jalen Hurts isn't playing as well as he had last year. Maybe both of those teams aren't quite as good. You wring the juice while the Super Bowl rematch still has some juice. You just don't need to do it on opening night because that's going to have juice no matter what.
Well, if you don't mind me jumping in, John, is it not, let's say they played week 12 instead of week 2, isn't it the Super Bowl preview rather than the Super Bowl rematch?
No idea. No idea. We have absolutely no idea.
Give me the best team in the AFC and the best team in the NFC today, Mike Sealski.
Today, it's those two teams.
Oh, okay. Well,
no, I'm serious.
Thank you very much.
But Jody, you know this. You know this. 11 or 12 weeks into a season, we don't know who the best teams are going to be. We didn't know the Eagles were going to be the best team in the NFC last year at this point in the offseason.
Jody picked the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl. He bet on the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl. Did you bet on them to win or just go?
Both.
All right. There we go.
Needed that win badly in February, but we did okay. I understood, Mike, that nobody knows what the hell's going to happen 12 weeks into the season. But when you've got the two teams that are the betting favorites, the media favorites, most people who understand football's favorites, it's not a bad prognostication to go, yeah, that could be a Super Bowl preview game months before it happens.
Yeah, you're right, Jody. But I do look at every NFL season as its own entity, with certain exceptions. You could always count on the Patriots carrying over year to year with Brady and Belichick. You can certainly do that with the Chiefs. But I'm not quite ready yet to say, okay, yeah, week 11 or 12, we know the Chiefs will be 10-1 and we know the Eagles will be 8-3. We might not. I think the chances are pretty good that that's the case, but the NFL doesn't like taking risks like that. They want sure bets.
Yeah. Bigger moment in Philadelphia, Mike Sealski. Schedule release. Sean Desai speaking for the first time. You're going to miss it. I'm sorry. That's a big moment, a seminal moment, some might call it. Or Game 6. I'll even throw Keith Jones in there. And who knows? I mean, you work for WIP. Jody works for WIP. Maybe you're running the Sixers. Maybe Jody's running the Eagles down the road.
Nobody wants that. Look, it's funny, John. I joked about this on Twitter the other day that this Game 6 for the Sixers, Game 5 the other night, and Game 6 tonight are the two biggest games for the Sixers in a generation.
Yeah,
like we are talking even bigger than, in a way, I would say comparable to 2001 when you talk about the Game 7s against the Raptors and the Bucks in that playoff run. But this playoff stretch that they're in has so many ramifications for them as a franchise. They're going to break the team up afterwards. They might break it up anyway, even if they get to the finals. Who the heck knows? But we all know how things operate around here, and in pro sports in general. In so many ways, the anticipation of what's going to happen in sports has overtaken what actually transpires on the field or the court or the rink. It's nuts because shows like this and shows like the ones that Jody and I host and First Take and First Things First and all these things, they're all built on speculation and they're all built on what hasn't happened yet. And so to a certain degree, I think there is going to be more interest in the Eagles schedule release, also because people plan their whole fall and winters around that. Which games are we going to? Which trips are we making? How are we handling Christmas this year? So it's a great question as to what really is going to drive more interest in the Philadelphia area.
All right, Mike, speaking of speculation, I'm going to get you to speculate for me right now. If we have the exact perfect understanding of Jonathan Gannon's defense, conceptually what it was and how it played out on the field during his 2 years here in Philadelphia. And don't kid yourself, it changed from year 1 to year 2 because of the addition of some talent on the defensive side that Howie Roseman gave Jonathan Gannon. So the combination of the entire 2 years, but with more of a lean toward year number 2, because that's the most recent and that's with the talent that they had. Sean Desai's defense will be a 100% carbon copy, looks pretty damn much the same, but because of the change of players, he's trying to do what he can do to fit, so he has to adjust. Sean Desai's got his own thought about what football is supposed to be, and it's similar to what Jonathan Gannon did, but surely not the same. What's the Eagle defense in 2023 going to look like as compared to when Jonathan Gannon was pushing the buttons?
I think it'll look relatively similar, Jody. I think part of the reason it'll look similar is that Nick Sirianni and to a certain degree Howie Roseman, this is the philosophy they have about what they want their defense to do. They want to be able to generate pressure on the opposing quarterback without having to blitz too much so they can cover in the back. I don't think the side will be too different. But look, personnel is going to dictate some of this. You got to find out about Nakobe Dean at linebacker. You're going to have a different rotation along the defensive line. The secondary is a bit of a question mark. Just bless you. Just because of the uncertainty at safety and because James Bradbury and Darius Slay are each a year older. So it won't be a carbon copy, but I think it'll be fairly similar. Maybe John disagrees with me, but I think all in all, it won't be as passive, I don't think, but it'll be similar.
Yeah, very similar. I mean, and I do think, Nick has said it a couple times. I mean, it's going to stay relatively. I compare it to the offense, Mike, and the shift from Nick Sirianni to Shane Steichen. Same offense, but you have a different guy, so it's going to be a little bit different because they're not, clones. People act differently in the moment, so you're going to have the same base philosophy, the same schematics. But Sean Desai's different than JG. So maybe on 3rd and 30, he's not trying to fool the other team and he gets off the field. maybe if he's lucky enough to get to the Super Bowl, he does something different in a key moment and everybody's happy.
Yeah.
But the scheme, the philosophy, that's not changing. And, I got a bunch of fans yesterday when I announced that Desai was going to be talking. They're asking, can you ask him if Jordan Davis is going to play a 3-down player, if Nolan Smith is going to play? I'm like, no, because I already know that.
Yeah.
I already know that stuff. And, as you try to get these guys talking, which is becoming more and more difficult, you get more information off the record, to be honest, than on the record. But Nick Sirianni's on the record numerous times. Explosive plays, turnovers, get home with 4, all the Vic Fangio stuff we know and love, the hits that I do not love, but certainly Eagles fans love. So I'll frame it this way to you, Mike. I don't think Eagles fans dislike Jonathan Gannon. They do, but I don't think they understand the reason why. I think they dislike the modern brand of football. In other words, so many teams run the Fangio scheme, the passive scheme, because they think it's the best way to win. Kyle Shanahan has said it's the toughest defense to deal with. Matt LaFleur has said it. Sean McVay has said it. That's why so many teams run it. Buying that or selling that?
Buying it. Buying it's the reason that Eagles fans generally didn't like Gannon. I think there are reasons beyond that. I think if you listen to him talk, you could sense that he was a short timer in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
And people don't like that. People want to feel like a coach or a player like loves being in Philadelphia and wants to stay in Philadelphia for the rest of his career. But I think that the scheme aspect of it is part of it. There's just something visceral about Eagles fans. They want their teams blitzing. They want their teams relentless. They don't like, passivity in any regard. And certainly Gannon schemed it certainly that way. And you're right. That's the preferred way to play in the NFL these days. I do wonder if that's going to change. I've made this point dozens of times, and I wonder maybe if this is the year where it's really a turning point, where running the ball is going to become like the way to exploit the stagnant system in the NFL, right? That teams are playing the Fangio system or being passive, and the way to move the ball on them is punch them in the mouth by running the ball right down their throats. You can see the Atlanta Falcons already heading in that direction. They're banking that they can win games by road grading teams, even with an unknown at quarterback in Desmond Ridder. So, and the Eagles did it last year to a great degree, whether you're talking about Hurts or the run game and the offensive line or whatever. So I wonder if that might change. That might be a factor that might change strategic approaches around the league before too long.
I think that the defenders of the Fangio system would use the word conservative rather than what one do you just
passive.
Use?
Passive.
Yeah, they don't want to hear passive, but they'd say conservative. It's a little bit more conservative.
Yeah.
No blitzing, no, not Buddy Ryan, not Jim Johnson. But with both you guys in it will be very similar to the defense we've had here before, as we believe the offense is going to be very similar as well, because there's not even an outsider coming in. Sean Desai is that, even though we believe that it'll be very similar to what Gannon did. All they're changing on offense is the passing, the quarterback coach becoming the offensive coordinator. Sounds like it should be a seamless transition, but I know both John and I truly appreciated the play calling ability of Shane Steichen. Easier said than done for Johnson stepping into Steichen's shoes. At least from the side standpoint, he's replacing a guy who nobody liked to begin with anyway. So he's going to get a little benefit of the doubt. If the offense gets off a little slow, will people be questioning, yeah, when can we get Shane Steichen back? Who's this Johnson guy? We need our play caller who got us to the Super Bowl back. How tough is it going to be for Johnson to step into that position?
Well, it'll be tough, Jody, because Shane Steichen was really good at what he did. He was a sharp guy. And the one thing I think that might mitigate that, though, is if Jalen Hurts kind of continues this ascendancy that we've seen, right? Like the one thing you don't necessarily take into consideration when you're evaluating a play caller is that maybe his players are just better one year to the next. And maybe Jalen Hurts can do more things as a quarterback for the way he could do more things last year than he could in 2021. He was just a better player obviously, in 2022, and maybe he gets a little bit better next year, or maybe the run game is different and better. And it allows them to do more things because they have a different variety of running backs. They have more guys who can hit it up, kind of up the middle or cut through more sharply through an opening than Miles Sanders did. Go back and watch that Super Bowl, for instance. There are a few times where Miles bounces it outside.
Play one,
right, when he shouldn't have.
Yeah,
exactly. So there are all those sorts of factors that go into it. But yeah, I think there is going to be some natural skepticism if the offense doesn't get off to a rip-roaring start because it was so good with Steichen at the controls.
At Mike Sealski, make sure you follow Mike on Twitter. Listen to him on Sports Radio WIP. Obviously, read him at Inquirer.com. The best columnist in the city, in my opinion. Down in Amarillo, we got to thank you again. Do some research on Terry Funk while you're down there as well.
I'll see what I can do, John.
But he's doing research for his next book, which is The Origin of the Slam Dunk, the history. That's going to be interesting. You know, what's funny, I think a couple days ago, the Lakers became the betting favorites to win the NBA championship. The Sixers were second. We might see Sixers-Lakers. So that'll give you a nice little bump for the rise of KobeBook.com. Hopefully we can see Sixers-Lakers.
I hope so. Your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah. But I'll end it here with you. We just talked about the coaches, a lot of stuff. Peter King didn't do the Eagles any favors this week. In his Football Morning in America column, he did his, and he admits, his way too early power rankings. But he put about 6 or 7 tiers, and the Eagles were alone on tier 1. Can't find a weakness, Mike Sealski. Can you find a weakness with the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yeah, look, the defensive secondary and the middle of the defense at the linebacker has some questions for me. The potential for some of the younger players stepping in and not being as productive on the defense is a possibility. Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham getting a little bit older, the guys who are a little bit younger, not quite ready to play at their level. I think there's the possibility for some regression there. I also think, John, that stuff just happens sometime. I remember very distinctly, I'm not even sure Peter will remember this, but I remember very distinctly Peter saying something very similar about the Eagles heading into the 2005 season. Again, they had lost in the Super Bowl the year before, and he went to Lehigh and went to train. It may not have been Lehigh. It may have been in that offseason. He said, I don't see a weakness in this team. I'm looking around. I don't see a weakness at all. The Eagles should get back to the Super Bowl and probably win it. And then Terrell Owens happened, and Donovan McNabb got hurt, and there was chaos and injury and driveway sit-ups and all kinds of stuff. And they went, 6-10. So stuff happens. And looking at them on paper, as Jody and I kind of talked about earlier, are they the best team in the NFC right now? Yeah, they probably are. But cliche as games aren't played on paper, and I'm sure a weakness will manifest itself.
Right. But I know my partner said it, and a lot of other people said it. They think last year's team was better than the team that won the Super Bowl. So
I thought so too. I did.
Yeah,
I did.
If there's going to be a drop off, it's going to be from a higher starting point to begin with, even though they don't have the ring to show for it. And who would be this? I'll probably get you in trouble with this question. If there is someone Terrell Owens like, because no one is Terrell Owens. We'll all admit to that right now, both in talent and behavior. But if there's someone with Terrell tendencies that could knock the ship off
he already left. He already left. He's in Detroit.
That's that doesn't count. I'm talking about someone who's here today, who is the guy who could rock the boat a little bit for the Eagles this year, if you're pointing to it as a possibility.
Well, I'll say this, Jody. I mean, he just joined the team, and he'll be a rookie, so he's not going to cause trouble in the same way that Terrell Owens would cause problems. But I'm still not convinced Jalen Carter is a sure thing, and it's a different situation from a star receiver like Owens who wants to assert himself. I think there are questions about this kid's maturity. I just think there are. And it doesn't mean he's not going to be a rip-roaring success. It doesn't mean that he's not going to get in with this locker room and this group of teammates and this culture and figure it all out. It just means the jury's out for right now. And if they swing and miss on that pick, you know, that could be damaging to them.
So let me add one more to it, and then we'll let you run. Along those lines, Matt Ariza, the punt god, who was released by the Buffalo Bills last year in training camp, has now been basically cleared, certainly of all criminal charges for what he was accused of, being part of a gang rape. The video evidence shows he wasn't even there at the time that he left earlier, but he still faces a civil lawsuit. So does the new Eagles defensive tackle, and they used the ninth pick in the draft to get him. If that's what they're using as a measuring stick, we'll take someone who's facing a civil suit, but not someone who's potentially facing criminal charges. Why wouldn't the Eagles have interest in Matt Ariza? Because I would suggest he comes in, signs tomorrow. He's the best punter in Eagles camp, and it's not really close.
Yeah, I think on paper, Jody, your logic makes sense, and I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to the Eagles signing Matt Ariza, but the Eagles, as we know, do their homework on these guys. Big Dom does his homework, and it's certainly possible that even with Ariza being cleared in a court of law, I don't know anything about him as a guy, like just as a human being, right? And maybe there's stuff that comes up in the background check where you say, you know what, we still don't feel comfortable with him. I don't know enough about Ariza one way or another to say that this is a guy that the Eagles ought to be bringing into their locker room. He might be. It's certainly possible, but he might not be for reasons apart from the outcome of that criminal investigation.
Mike, great stuff. We not only appreciate you coming on, but getting up early down there in Amarillo, Texas to jump aboard with us. When is the dunking book due out?
It's supposed to be out next year. I have until November to finish the first draft of the manuscript, and we're hoping it comes out in 24. Hopefully on Christmas Day on a Wednesday, right in the middle of the
There you go. Yeah, exactly right.
Nice.
He is the scheduling god. Mike Sealsky here with us. I'm Birds 365. Mike, thanks much. We'll get you back in a couple weeks.
Sounds great, guys. Thanks.
Thanks,
Lead
Mike.
columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer.
That was a nice plug. Yeah, get it in there, baby.
Mike Sealsky here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac coming back. We've still got plenty of time to go today. And oh, by the way, do not forget, as we've told you during the week, since it is scheduling week, we do not know when the Cowboys and Eagles will be playing. We are hoping that one of those games leaked out. We've had 3 leakages on the Eagles' upcoming schedule for the season. We don't know when the boys and the Birds will be facing off, but we do know that John Machota, who covers the Cowboys for The Athletic, is going to jump in, talk about the Cowboys offseason. We've been previewing the 3 divisional opponents of the Eagles this week. We did the Giants. We did the Commanders. We got the Cowboys yet to come. John Machota of The Athletic, Cowboy Beat Guy, is going to join us in about, 25 minutes, but keep it here with us right now on Birds 365.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
This is Governor Ed Rendell urging you to vote for my friend Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court. I appointed Judge Dugan in 2007 to the Philadelphia Municipal Court, where he now serves as its president judge. Pat is a proud Army veteran of 23 years. He served 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's also recommended by the Philadelphia Bar Association. But most importantly, he bleeds Eagles green and hates those Dallas Cowboys. So get out and vote for number 3, Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court.
Paid for by Dugan 2023.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back, guys. Curtis McDonald, John McMullen here with you on Birds 365. On schedule release day, we've got a couple of early leaks. We know 3 of the 17 games that the Eagles will be playing this
not
year.
officially. I mean, I think
you're not trusting Mama Kelsey. You think she's giving bad info?
I think she's got a good handle on it, but I can't say officially is all I'm saying.
That's fair. Right. Doesn't have the NFL seal of approval on it yet, but Mama Kelsey's got her own seal of approval. And if I were a wagering man, I would bet that the Eagles and the Chiefs play week number 2, just like Mama Kelsey says. But you're right. It's not official. We do have 2 official dates. That would be the Eagles and the Giants on Christmas, 4/25. Sorry, Johnny Mac. And then week 13, the 49ers coming to Philadelphia for an NFC Championship game rematch at 4/25. Sorry, Johnny Mac. But we've got a whole bunch of games.
I already knew this was coming, Jody. By the way, your team is relevant. Monday Night Football, September 11th, New York Jets hosting Buffalo. Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen. So that's the first week of Monday Night Football. I'm sure they'll have a double header, I believe, on the first.
Yeah, you
week.
said they're going to be upwards of 3 double.
Well, one's Christmas. I mean, Christmas is on a Monday, and they're going to have 3 games. I believe on Christmas. Don't quote me on that, but I believe they're having 3 games on Christmas. And then you have the opener, and I think there's going to be one more. And then I was just saying Peter Schrager had Mike North, who's one of the NFL schedule makers, on his podcast. And he said, expect a lot of Chiefs, which we already know. We see Jets, Cowboys, Eagles, and more Bears in prime time than you'd expect. So people are betting on Justin Fields. So we already knew. I mean, you're going to see a lot of Eagles in those primetime windows.
Right, which primetime is primetime, and most everybody's definition of primetime means night games. But truth be told, for the NFL scheduling, the late afternoon, late for us, because again, East Coast and Birds 365, we've got some West Coast listeners, or at least they act like them as 49er fans here on our stream. We always think of things in terms of the time zone that we're sitting in at that time. 4:25 is considered a late afternoon game. Well, on the West Coast, that's a 1:25 game, but it is usually the biggest individual draw. If you had all the games in that are on at the same time, Sunday afternoon outdoes both Sunday night and Monday night. So the NFL's definition of prime time could differ, could vary a little bit from what John Q. Public puts out there. That late Sunday national game is as important as the quote unquote night games that the NFL puts up, even though some people may not think about it. And yeah, I think we've got 2 official games on the books for the Eagles as far as the schedule goes, and both of them are late afternoon games, which for me is as important and as big a game as any of the night games. So yeah, John, I don't think you're going to get near as many 1 o'clock starts as you would like.
No, well, that I knew that coming in. That's baked in, but it is what it is. I mean, they're a good team and they're a popular team. So, yeah, I mean, the Jets, and we've already seen the Jets, how things can quickly shift with Aaron Rodgers. Detroit, people are kind of betting on now. Mike North says Chicago. So they're seeing that shift from Minnesota and Green Bay in the NFC North. So I asked Mike, I was, tongue in cheek, because I think it's absurd, but Detroit week 1. What do you think of that, Jody McDonald?
All right. Do we have any Detroit Lion fans here on our stream? I'll check them off. No problem whatsoever. I think the NFL's line of thinking behind that one is, do they play the Lions this year? Does Kansas City play? They play the Vikings this year. If the Viking game is in Minnesota, then they couldn't have gone there. But if the Viking game was in Kansas City, I guess they could have gone there. I think they decided to pick a team that Patrick Mahomes could put 50 on. And oh, by the way, that Lion defense was pretty damn bad last year. And we saw
they got CJ now.
CJ could get burnt by Patrick Mahomes in week number 1 too. They didn't want to go with the rematch of the Super Bowl, so give us a good matchup we can sink our teeth into. Lions, an up-and-coming team playing for a playoff spot last week of the season, just came up short because of the outcome of the other games. By the way, let's have a team that Kansas City can go wild against on offense. We'll put in a team there with a questionable, if not suspect, defense. And
now it's interesting because they're plugged into the NFC North. Green Bay and Minnesota are away games. Chicago, Detroit are home games. Mike North just talked about Chicago, as I mentioned. Why not Chicago? Chicago's the bigger market.
Their defense is that whole division's defense is questionable, to be truthful with you.
Yeah.
So they could have gone Chicago. Fields against Mahomes.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah. Young versus, and that's a big market, obviously. Chicago.
Right. But here's the reason why they couldn't go. And you and I know that things happen during an offseason, like the team that drafted first against the team that drafted last. Yeah, no, they weren't going to do that. That just sniffs too much of a mismatch of week number 1. You can't have the first team against the 32nd team as your kickoff the season game.
Yeah,
at least the Lions were right there battling for a playoff spot.
That's a bad look. That's definitely a bad look. One of my early predictions, the Chiefs are going 4-0 versus that division. An early prediction.
You're going out on a limb on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd share that with
now. Patrick Mahomes might get hurt, but if he's there, they're going to go 4-0.
All right, later on this afternoon, or is it morning? What time are the coordinators supposed to speak as of now, John, or am I asking you way too early?
Yeah, 12:45-ish.
Okay, so they have at least given you a general vicinity of when.
I assume it'll be a little bit late, but if you want to watch it, be in front of your computer, wherever you watch press conferences at 12:45-ish.
All right, so here is, again, speculatory question, as Mike Sealski so well put when he was on with us. It's kind of what we do. We have to talk about something that hasn't happened yet. We need to speculate ahead of time in advance, and we don't always love doing it, and sometimes we beg off doing it. But if you're not willing to do it at all, then you should not be in the business that we're in. We're going to hear from Sean Desai as the new Eagles defense coordinator and Williams as their new offensive coordinator. when Nick Sirianni was hired as a head coach, I remember where I was. I was in my car. I had to take my wife to a doctor's appointment, and I was sitting in the car listening. She went inside and said, listen, the coach is going to be, I got to hear what he's got to say here, even though I was rolling a tape on the television presentation, but I wanted to hear it live for the first time. And we'll all admit, the coach seemed a little bit nervous. He seemed a little bit overmatched. He seemed like he was not ready for his first ever media availability here in Philadelphia. And shoot, I was fielding calls 2 days later on WIP. They need to fire this guy. Let's get out in front of it. He can't be the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They need to fire this.
Oh, John McMullen, I took those calls. Hey, I know it's going to be a bad look, but they need to get themselves another head coach. This guy's a bumbling idiot. I took those calls. And now we know Nick Sirianni is a Super Bowl coach within 2 years, and he handles himself very well in his public speaking appearances. There's a chance that the two new Eagle coordinators don't come off as being in grasp of the situation today. And there will be second guessers if they don't like the answers and or the way they present their answers. If that's the case for one of the two today, which one do you think is more likely?
I mean, they've both done it before. Sean's done it in Chicago. I just talked about Chicago. I mean, Chicago's not a walk in the park. Brian's done it at the college level. He's more used to us. He's already talking to us. I don't think you're going to see a catastrophic Sirianni like.
This is pure speculation on my part. I'm not asking you to say it's going to happen. I'm telling you ahead of time.
I guess
if
Brian,
it happens for one of them, which one do you think it would be more likely?
I guess Brian, because college isn't the pros, and there's going to be more. It's a lot of student reporters. It's not as who aren't willing to ask certain questions. You've seen many college coaches bully young reporters over the years. That's a little bit more difficult to do at the pro level. So I guess from that standpoint, I would. Sean's already done it, like I said, in Chicago. It was a short period,
right, but then again, didn't Nick do it in Indianapolis before he came here? And he was the coordinator,
that's fair
so
point.
He spoke to the media, and then he kind of fumbled his way to his first press conference. When you're taking a step up into bigger shoes, there is a little pressure on you.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I'm putting more on Chicago than Indianapolis. But, here's the issue with the Eagles coordinators. And I think you saw this. More fans paying attention who watch these things saw it. This is Nick's team. He wants his coordinators on the same page. You didn't get a lot from Jonathan Gannon or Shane Steichen on the podium. We got much more off the podium. They're very structured. They want everybody on message. So they're going to have these guys on message, which is Nick Sirianni's message. And sometimes that can come across poorly because they're not really answering questions. Shane was here for 2 years. I don't think he answered one question on the podium that gave you any valuable information, literally, not one question. And he's tremendous off the podium, tremendous. Perception sometimes is different than reality. So I lean towards the way the Eagles do things, and they want everybody buttoned up. That might come across poorly.
And we've got an example of Jonathan Gannon when he's, again, made a move, stepped into bigger shoes, the pressure gets ratcheted up. I don't think he's done a very good job since he's taken over the Arizona head coaching job on the podium, off the podium.
That's why they
in
button
any way,
people
shape,
up,
or
by the
form.
way. That's a perfect example of why they button people up or try to button people up. Because once you start talking extemporaneously, sometimes stuff comes out you don't want to come out.
So just to prep the Eagle fans today, you're saying expect Very little, because that's just the Eagles' way of doing their business, which I'm not knocking or mocking. It's smart. The way the Eagles attempt to handle the flow of information is smart for them. It's less entertaining for us. It's less for us to sink our teeth into, but that's the way you run an organization. And in a year after they went to the Super Bowl, came this close to winning it, you can't really second guess it. You got to say, okay, this is the way we've got to get our Eagle information.
And I applaud, I'm a big fan of CEO coaches. Nick tries to control each part of this team. And part of that is because he doesn't want people pointing the fingers at other people. Like if something goes wrong, he wants you to point the finger at him. And that's how it should be. Now, didn't work because plenty of people pointed the fingers elsewhere. But that's what he wants. He wants people pointing the finger at him. And that's why he does the things the way he does the things that he does.
So even though Sean Desai is coming from outside the organization, the other offensive coordinator, of course, was here and was elevated to that position, Desai coming in from outside, you think that it'll stay the same in that the defensive coordinator will have a little bit more latitude to do it his way than the offensive coordinator, because Nick Sirianni, offensive guy, very much included in the game planning leading up to game day, just maybe not calling the play each and every single play in and play out in the CEO status. Desai's going to have a lot more room to roam and do what he wants.
Oh yeah,
defense,
I mean
right?
he's in charge of the defense. I mean Nick's a little bit. He'll recommend a tweak here and there if he doesn't like the way things are going. But for the most part, he's going to run the defense. He's going to be on his own. But when he's on the podium, he's going to be. And the Eagles have had plenty of time to prep him because he's been here forever already. And this is the first time he's going to talk to us. But on the field, yeah, I mean, that's his domain. Nick's not a defensive guy. He'll, give some thoughts. This is how the offense will attack you, things like that. But yeah, I mean, just like Jim Schwartz was to Doug Peterson and Jonathan Gannon was to Nick Sirianni. Those guys are the head coaches of the defense, basically.
Right. But the reason why I asked the question, and please, if I'm off base, tell me. I remember back, and you and I talking about it, that we didn't even know that this was the case, that Jonathan Gannon was hired to be the defensive coordinator before Nick Sirianni was hired to be the head coach. So even though Gannon and Sirianni certainly knew each other, it wasn't like, whoa, you're hiring my DC head of me. It was like, we got Jonathan Gannon, was probably Sirianni's response when he found out when he's getting the head coaching job that Gannon was going to be his defense coordinator. He was probably all smiles. But that's not standard operating procedure in the NFL. Usually you hire your head coach first, and then he is at least a collaborator, if not the driving force of putting his staff together. The Eagles did it different than most people do.
By the way, can I correct something there? Because the Eagles got very angry at that. So I got to correct the semantics of it. They did not hire Jonathan Gannon before they hired Nick Sirianni. They agreed to hire Jonathan Gannon before they agreed to hire Nick Sirianni. So,
thank you for covering your rear end, my rear end, the show's rear end, whatever, if the Eagles needed to be stated that way. What's the difference? They can get mad at me all they want. That's fine. The Eagles decided, what's the word you used?
Agreed to term. Basically, what happened was, for people that don't know, the Eagles were very close to hiring Josh McDaniels as head coach. Again, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Jonathan, again, is very close to Josh McDaniels. They have a relationship, the John Carroll Mafia, I like to call it in the NFL. They're very close. Now, Jeffrey Lurie, I think, correctly, kind of surmised the situation. Josh McDaniels and Howie Roseman were both on the same page saying, no, we'll get along. We can work together. And I think Jeffrey Lurie basically came to the conclusion, I don't care what they're saying today.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's not going to work. And I think he's right.
So
I think
do
he's
I.
100% right.
Yep.
And they went in a different direction, and we're going to keep interviewing guys until they found somebody they liked. They happened to interview Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni happened to have a relationship with Jonathan Gannon, so he had no issues whatsoever with Jonathan Gannon. Was on board, but yeah, he was going to be here as the defensive coordinator no matter what.
All right, so here's the question I want to answer, and then we got John Machota to join us to talk some Cowboys off season. 100% the decision that Sean Desai is the Eagles defensive coordinator going into this season. Give me the breakdown percentage-wise of how that decision went.
100%, 100% Nick Sirianni, 100%.
That Howie Roseman had no say whatsoever. Or Jeff
Howie's role in that is he gathers candidates, and then it's up to Nick Sirianni to interview the candidates and make the decisions. 100% his decision.
Well, if Howie's gathering candidates, does he get 0% for that? If he only puts
because
coach, then the coach can't hire someone that Howie doesn't deliver to him.
Because you can't know everybody, right? You don't have a relationship with everybody. A lot of people he did.
Neither does Howie.
Kevin Patullo. No, but the point is you delegate. In other words, Nick's got a lot of stuff he's got to deal with. He doesn't necessarily want to spend all his time doing research on candidates, so he delegates that to the personnel department. Howie has done that in the past with certain guys, Brian Johnson being one of them. Found him at the college level. He's not binding him alone. A lot of people in the NFL knew about Brian Johnson. What he does is if Nick doesn't have a specific choice in mind, like say Kevin Patullo, he knew he wanted Kevin Patullo. No issues. He didn't need any help. Jamal Singleton's another one. Didn't have a prior relationship. Howie gathers a list of candidates, and then Nick Sirianni interviews the candidates and makes a decision on who he wants to hire. I don't put much stock in the gathering of the candidates, other than I think Howie and the staff do a good job, but there's no pressing. Jeff Stoutland, they told Nick, look, you're keeping Jeff Stoutland. There are certain instances. And by the way, Nick is not upset by that today. So everything's a little bit different. But in the case of Sean Desai, he interviewed, he liked him. He wanted to keep the same philosophy, the same system, the same scheme. And it was his decision.
All right, good, because Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles had already agreed, not hired, not signed contract, but agreed to have him come in as the defensive coordinator. So in this case, if you're telling me it was that much more a decision by the head coach that he becomes their defensive coordinator, maybe he treats him the exact same way he does with Gannon, that he will be autonomous with the defense. I thought maybe if it was a collaborative decision by the organization, maybe Nick would be more involved on the defensive side. Sounds like that's not going to be the case. All right, we're going to talk offense and defense with our next guest. Did the Cowboys improve on both? Neither. Stayed the same during this offseason. They are the number one threat to the Eagles in the NFC East coming into the season. Cowboys and Eagles, always a fun conversation we're going to have with John Machota next. He covers the boys day in and day out for The Athletic, and he's going to talk Cowboys off season with us next here on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
This is Governor Ed Rendell urging you to vote for my friend Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court. I appointed Judge Dugan in 2007 to the Philadelphia Municipal Court, where he now serves as its president judge. Pat is a proud Army veteran of 23 years. He served 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's also recommended by the Philadelphia Bar Association. But most importantly, he bleeds Eagles green and hates those Dallas Cowboys. So get out and vote for number 3, Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court.
Paid for by Dugan 2023.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back here with Young Birds 365. We get to add another JM to the mix. Our buddy John Machota from down there in Big D to talk Cowboys offseason. Mr. Machota, how has your offseason been?
Pretty similar to most in the past. I can't really complain. You know, there's been some changes down here, but nothing that I think significantly changes. I think the Cowboys are on a pretty similar path as they've been the last couple of years.
I guess we'll start with the biggest change, at least off the field. That's Mike McCarthy taking back the play calling. No more Kellen Moore, Brian Schottenheimer, the offensive coordinator. How's that being taken outside of Dallas? A lot of people. I like Mike McCarthy as a coach more than most people. He's had a lot of success, but for whatever reason, didn't win enough with Aaron Rodgers, didn't win the big one. I don't know. There's a lot of I'm sure you hear it all the time, John. There's a lot of shots taken at Mike. Where are you and him as the play caller?
I think it's fine. I don't think it's some move that all of a sudden you're like, well, that doesn't. That'll put him over the top. Super Bowls, NFC Championship game, here they go. Like, they needed probably to change some things up a little bit. But I would say when it comes to perception with coordinators, especially offensive play callers, it seems like the only thing that ever excites anyone is if it's this new, young, up-and-coming that nobody knows anything about. Anybody that's already done stuff in the league, it's like, that's boring, that's old, we don't care about that. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the fact of Mike McCarthy doesn't get enough credit for the success that they had in Green Bay because he left, and I didn't see him winning any Super Bowls after he left. So I think that he was a really good coach in Green Bay, and because those were Aaron Rodgers' best years, he doesn't get any credit for that. Now, of course, he's not going to be able to do the exact same things he did with Rodgers, but the guy obviously knows how to call an offense, and so. He's in a position where, his job's on the line. They have to go deep into the playoffs. And so I think all along from the moment he took this job, unless things were just great with Kellen Moore, which they weren't bad, but something needed to change. And obviously the quarterback wasn't going to change. The defense has been its strength. They're not going to change anything there. So what's the next thing that could possibly change? And so this is why they're going in this direction. Do I guarantee you that it's going to have great success? I can't guarantee that, but I don't think it's going to be tremendously different to where all of a sudden it was like, wow, that was a big mistake. Now all of a sudden they're going to drop off. I think they're going to be pretty similar to what they've been the last couple of years, because at the end of the day, it's a National Football League. You can have all the coaches, give me the best players.
That's very true. But one more question on that relationship, because relationships are important between the quarterback and the offensive coordinator. How was the relationship between Moore and Dak? How will the relationship between Dak and his head coach / offensive coordinator, which kind of changes the dynamic of the relationship, how would you compare the two?
Yeah, he was close with Kellen Moore. This isn't, certainly Kellen Moore is not here or did not leave Dallas because Dak didn't want him here. That's not the case at all. Dak loved working with Kellen. They had been teammates together when Dak came into the league. And then Kellen became quarterback coach and then offensive coordinator. And I thought that they, saw things eye to eye offensively. And so it is going to be a change for Dak, but Dak's also a person that needs to take that next step in his career too. So that's why I also look at this as this is a veteran play caller. He's worked with a future Hall of Fame quarterback and other quarterbacks that are of that level as well before in his career. So why not? Why couldn't this be the guy that does it for him? So it'll be interesting. But when you say the word perception, though, one of the first things I think about is how, during the previous 3 years, when you're the head coach, obviously you're going to take shots when the team doesn't succeed. But now, after every single game, if the offense struggles, immediately that goes to Mike. Whereas in previous years, if the offense struggled, you'd look towards Kellen Moore and, and more blame goes on your coordinator. Well, if the offense struggles at all any week, that's going to be more blame on Mike McCarthy. And so obviously a lot more on his plate. And obviously expectations have to be much higher than what they've been, what they've reached the last couple of years.
Now, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, because I don't know if the door is completely shut. There's been some lip service, but I don't think it's real. Ezekiel Elliott is gone. He's still out there, though, technically. So in theory, they could bring him back. But how does that shift the offense? And stylistically, still a good player, but obviously a descending player. And now they have to go a little bit in a different direction with Tony Pollard being the lead back and doing some things probably in a less power-based way, I would say it. Is that going to change things dramatically for the Cowboys?
I don't know if it's dramatically, but it definitely changes things because the Cowboys haven't really replaced Ezekiel Elliott. They went out and signed Ronald Jones. They drafted Deuce Vaughn in the 6th round. Those aren't really Ezekiel Elliott replacements. The one thing that's really missing on this offense is an Ezekiel Elliott type back. Who's going to be that guy, when they play the Eagles and it's 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 late in the game. And for all the criticism that you could have had of Zeke, a lot of it comes because of what his contract ended up being. Zeke was still very good, goal line, short yardage situations. You gave him the ball, he was going to get you that yard most of the time. And now they don't really have that guy. Tony Pollard is great in space, and Deuce Vaughn, I think, is a player that can be great in space. But who's that guy that puts their head down and you're just like, man, that you're going to get that yard, and when you don't get that yard, you're surprised. And so it's kind of interesting that if Ezekiel Elliott had been with a different team that had released him, I think the Cowboys would be super interested. But because of the way things ended, it's like, well, we're not going to bring him back in here. So now you're sitting there thinking, like, I don't think they're completely set at running back. I'm interested to see what they do there. Maybe that it ends up being one of those things where they go get like a Leonard Fournette or somebody like that. But I just do not see Ezekiel Elliott coming back. I think he'll get an offer from someone else. And obviously ain't going to be anywhere close to the money he was making before. But I look at this roster and I don't see a replacement. I don't see that 6'1", 220 guy that you're going to hand the ball to on 3rd and 1 situations right now.
What is Brandon Cook's role going to be for the Dallas Cowboys this year? Major offseason acquisition. He's put up numbers, but he's become one of the more transient guys in the National Football League, going from team to team to team to team. Why is it going to work in Dallas?
Well, he's in a spot now where, his role is pretty clear. He's got to take the top off the defense. They've been missing that speed on the outside. And so a veteran guy like him who, he's been around Drew Brees, been around Tom Brady, been to, Super Bowls, he has the skins on the wall that you would think he should come in immediately and be a capable guy of getting 1,000 yards. And the Cowboys had that a few years ago when they had Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup was healthy, with CeeDee Lamb. And then last year they trade Amari Cooper, don't get much for him in return. Michael Gallup was not fully recovered from the knee injury he had the year before. Their 3rd round pick, Jalen Tolbert, gave them nothing. So there was some issues at wide receiver. It had to be addressed this offseason. It was kind of surprising they made the move for Cooks, because it just isn't typically a Cowboys move during the free agency portion of the year. I thought they would address it early in the draft, but they wanted a proven guy. To now, Cooks is probably your 2/3 with Gallup, if Gallup's all the way back. And now you're kind of back to where you have 3 formidable guys on the outside. But it is interesting, you mentioned it, as good as he's been for all these different teams, it is to be traded as many times as he has. And he's not like he's a cancer in the locker room type guy or anything like that. It has been
so weird.
Because he's had success.
He's been so successful. He's traded so much. He's not a bad guy. It is one of the weirdest things, John. Their other kind of splashy free agent acquisition type move was more interesting to me. That's on the defensive side of the ball with Stephon Gilmore. Now he's 32, but he can still play. And the Cowboys had a lot of issues when they had some injuries opposite Trayvon Diggs. Now all of a sudden you have Diggs and Gilmore. That's pretty good. I like that on paper.
Yeah, as long as Gilmore can stay healthy, they'll be fine there at corner and be much improved than they were last year, because you're right. During the last 4 or 5 games of the regular season and going into the playoffs, that other outside corner spot was far, far from a strength after Anthony Brown went down. And so they made a conscious effort to address that this offseason, and those deals happened. The same thing as Cooks right around the same time. It was very clear that those were 2 of their biggest holes, and they were going to fill them with proven players. They weren't going to be leaving it open to some competition out in training camp. And so if Gilmore can stay healthy, that was the big thing, is that he wasn't fully healthy 2 years ago. And then he went to the Colts, and from talking to him a week ago, that's when he really started to get back. And he says right now he's healthier than he's been in the last 2 or 3 years. And now he's in a spot where he doesn't have to be their number one. He just has to be formidable on that other side, because, obviously Trayvon Diggs gets a lot of attention and everyone knows who he is in the league and his ability to take the ball away. And so it's interesting on paper, because the Cowboys just continue to get stronger on defense, to the point where this could be the best defense in the league. It's certainly going to be in the conversation again as one of the best. And this is an organization that for a long time down here, it's been very offense first. And now I think it's officially changed. This is a defensive first team.
All right. We've kind of sung the Cowboys' praises of a couple of acquisitions during the offseason free agency. Yeah, we got to bring it back down a little bit. Luke Schoonmaker, how many tight ends went before him in the second round? The Cowboys decided to sit and wait rather than aggressively go up. You never know who's going to come off the board, but I know as soon as the pick went in, they said this was the guy we were targeting all along. I'm going to throw the BS flag on that one. Give us the backstory as to how Luke Schoonmaker ended up as their second-round tight end choice in the draft.
Well, it's very clear that Mike McCarthy likes the Big Ten. And all of their tight ends are Big Ten tight ends right now. They have Peyton Hendershot was from Indiana, Luke Schoonmaker, Sean McCune, both from Michigan, and then Jake Ferguson is a Wisconsin guy. He likes the way that it translates from what they did in college to the pros. It's very similar. They're tight ends in the Big Ten, most of those schools. Iowa is obviously another one where it usually translates pretty well to what is asked of them immediately in the NFL. So that's why they like Schoonmaker. He was certainly not their top player on their board or anything like that. They can say whatever they want, but it's the player of need that they wanted. And if they had waited to the third round, then all of a sudden, then you're really wiped out of the position as deep as it was in this draft class. The one thing I'll say, though, is it's just so hard to predict at tight end. You just go through the last 10 years of tight end in the first round. The hits are just it's pathetic. It's unbelievable how few hits there are in the first round when you take a tight end. And then you get all these guys that have had success at tight end, and they are second, third round picks that you're just like, how is Travis Kelce not a top 10 pick? Guys like that. So that's one of the Mark Andrews,
Dallas Goedert here.
Yeah.
Rounder. Eagles tried to get up ahead of the Cowboys to get Dallas Goedert.
It's a position that just I don't know. Obviously, when they take Luke Schoonmaker, it's not revving up the fan base to, oh, this is the missing piece. So they lose Dalton Schultz. That's how they're going to replace him. It's going to be interesting to see because from day one, I don't think he's going to step in and be what Dalton Schultz was when he left. So there's going to be some growing pains probably at that position for sure.
The first round pick, Mazi Smith. Now, I've been through this here and still yesterday, John Machota. I got a fan because Sean Desai is going to speak for the first time today, even though he's hired 6 months ago. But anyway, Eagles fans are obsessed with Jordan Davis turning into a 3-down player. Why? Because he was taken number 13 overall. He's not a 3-down player. He's a 2-down player. He's a run stuffer. But for whatever reason, people do not see the value in that type of player. It's not quite as bad, Dallas, with Mazi Smith at 26. But is there going to be an issue? Because he's a physical freak. He was on Bruce Feldman's list. He's got all this athleticism, but he's a 2-down player. Jordan Davis is a physical freak, but he's a 2-down player. Can NFL fans accept a first-round pick that's a 2-down player?
The only difference here I'll say is that, well, I'm just going to use the last decade as an example. The Eagles have had very good defensive tackle play, so I feel like Eagles fans can be a little bit pickier. The Cowboys defensive tackle play. I mean, this is the first defensive tackle taken in the first round since 1991 when they took Russell Maryland. I mean, the Cowboys just have not addressed defensive tackle enough. I mean, Mazi Smith's probably got the chance to be one of their most impactful defensive tackles in a long time. I mean, maybe going back to Jay Ratliff. I mean, it has not been a position of strength. You know, under Rod Marinelli, it was always they were trying to find the next 3 technique that, you know, really stood out. And they just never really got it. And so with Mazi Smith, I agree with you. He is more of your 1 technique run stopper. But if you look at the Cowboys defense under Dan Quinn, they've been strong in almost every category except for run defense. And it needed to be addressed. And I just look at it as this: if you don't do it there, when do you do it?
By the way, John, I think it's a great fit, especially when you have the pass rushers the Cowboys have. I think it's a great fit because he can do the dirty work, and all of a sudden Mike can go get the quarterback even more, DeMarcus Lawrence. I think it's a great fit, but if he doesn't put up 7 sacks and he's a first-round pick, people are like, what is it? And you don't get a lot of tackles because you're taking up blockers. The linebackers are getting the tackles. It could be a great pick, and nobody knows it. That's kind of what I think you're in for.
He might not even get the sacks, and it just might improve their run defense to where it could be top 10. And that would be worth it. But to your point, sacks are such a big deal with fans too. And you see a guy, they draft Mazi Smith. What's going to be the first thing you do? You go look at what he did in college. And obviously he was an outstanding player, one of the best players on this Michigan team the last 2 years, that it's been the best football Michigan's played in 2 decades.
Yeah.
And he's been a key part of that, but he has a half sack. Yeah. He has a half sack in his, so that's going to be the part that fans aren't going to love. But I just look at it from this standpoint. If it wasn't going to be Mazi Smith there, it was going to be Matthew Bergeron, an offensive guard from Syracuse. How much does that really excite the fan base either? So it was like whatever they were going to pick there, it was not going to be one where the fans are running to the pro shop getting a jersey. But I'm interested to see the Mazi Smith thing just because the run defense was constantly the thing where you're like, man, they do so many things well on defense, but how is that run defense still not even middle of the pack? And so this move should put them at least there.
All right, this will tell you that something I said previously on the show is stone cold true. Emmitt Smith was number 22. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes.
I'm terrible with numbers. When I was a kid, and Emmitt wasn't when I was a kid, but I was a Cowboy fan when Emmitt Smith was there. I had forgotten what number he was. 22, right? I did remember.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So does Mazi Smith ask for 22? So that way you can confuse people with Smith 22 jerseys down there in Dallas.
No, it's funny that you say that because he's going to take 58, which is what he wore in college. So it was an easy transition. But not too long ago, the Cowboys had Alden Smith and he wore 58. So, just one Smith to the other. But yeah, now
50. I had the wrong Smith. I skipped over Alden. Alden, you have my apologies. I went back to Emmett. I should have remembered Alden.
But the team right now has Mozzie Smith, Tyler Smith, Tyron Smith. So yeah, whatever.
Yeah, a lot of
Smiths. Well, that's where I'm going. Over to the offensive line next. Assuming health with everyone, and that was a big assumption for the Cowboys last year because they're plugging and playing and moving guys around and getting our guy RFX left tackle out there to play a little football at age was 40 this year, John?
Oh yeah, he was 40.
Yeah,
41 this year. Yeah.
Assuming that everyone is healthy, what is the Dallas offensive line going to look like, left to right, starters and depth?
Yeah, so left guard is a big question mark here. When Connor McGovern, they weren't going to pay him a ton, so he moved on, signed with Buffalo. So left guard is completely wide open. They added Chuma Adoga, who is not really a left guard. He's played more offensive tackle in his career, but they look at him as a guard from the New York Jets. They signed him. So he is probably the leader in the clubhouse right now because for some reason they are reluctant to put Tyler Smith back at left guard.
Really?
They want their first round pick to be that left tackle. What I think might happen, though, is their hand might be forced, and they might, because they want to get their best 5 out there. And if that happens, then you got to put Tyler Smith back at left guard, Tyron Smith at left tackle. But as they say right now, they really wanted to try and get Tyler Smith to stay at left tackle, and then at right tackle, start Tyron Smith over there where he ended last season, and have Terrence Steele be the swing tackle. And they're not going to say this, but the thinking behind that is because Tyron Smith just can't stay healthy. And so why pencil him into this starting spot to think that you're going to get, you might only get 3 games from him, 5 games from him. So I think that that's their plan right there. As of right now, they would love for somebody else to come along, win that left guard job, whether it's Adoga. They signed TJ Bass out of Oregon right after the draft, who, our guy at The Athletic, Dane Brugler, had a 5th, 6th round grade. He was certainly a draftable player. Dane had him as one of the top 5 guards in the draft, and he was one of their top undrafted guys that they signed. I think he'll get in the mix. They drafted Awesome Richards. He's an offensive tackle out of North Carolina in the 5th round. He'll get work there at left guard. And even Terrence Steele, their right tackle, might get some work there too. They're going to try and find someone else, but if week 1 they don't have a better option, I find it hard to believe that Tyler Smith's not going to be.
Boy, man, I'm surprised by that, John.
Yeah.
Because I think that looks, if you have Smith and Smith on the left side, and I get with Tyron, you're worried about the injuries, but yeah, so what? Tyler's already proven he can play left tackle. If he's got to move him there. Terrence Steele's turned into a pretty good right tackle. What, just wait for the injury and then just move it. Yeah. I'm
I just think
criticize Mike McCarthy for that.
No. And deservedly so. I mean, I do think Tyler Smith's best position going forward for the future, he will be their left tackle. And so maybe it's one of these things where they just don't want to, consistently cross train him. It's kind of one of those things. Hey, because last year at training camp, he was playing left guard. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, we're going to need him at left tackle. And they kind of just threw him to the wolves and it worked out. And that's where he proved that, hey, I can handle this. And he is real sharp kid. I mean, he has all of the traits and everything about him makes you think that he's going to be a Dallas Cowboy for the next decade. But for some reason, they do not want him. And that's why I said that Mike McCarthy, the coaching staff, they seriously considered Matthew Bergeron with that 1st round pick so that they would plug him at left guard. But then the rest of the offensive line is Tyler Biadasz again is their center. He made his first Pro Bowl last year.
Zach Martin, man.
Zach Martin at right guard. And
one of the best players in football.
Yeah, so I mean, the other positions are pretty set, but that left guard is going to be one of those where it's going to be one of the biggest ones that we're monitoring throughout training camp, that's for sure.
All right, John, I had some fun with this question, asking it of guests on our show to put themselves into Jeff Lurie's shoes about how they would like to see the first game of the year scheduled at Kansas City, lay up against the Arizona Cardinals, however you go with it. I'm going to put you in Jerry Jones's shoes instead of Jeff Lurie's. Eagles and Cowboys going to play twice this year. If you consider it in 3 sections, early season matchup, middle of the season matchup, late in the season matchup. If you had to land the 2 games against the Eagles, if the commissioner gave you the latitude to say you can place them in 2 of the 2 games in any of the 3 positions, early, middle, late, what would be best for the Cowboys? The matchup between Philadelphia and Dallas, best from a Dallas perspective. Do you want to see the Eagles early and get it over and done with? Then in the middle, you want to stay away from late? No, we want to get them late because we're going to get better as the season goes along. If you were in Jerry's shoes and the commissioner gave you latitude to schedule those two games, how would you break them out?
The Eagles playing in Philadelphia, that game as early in the season as possible. I mean, just because weather, and things like that can factor in.
Good point.
This is a team that, I mean, it's funny. Mike McCarthy calls them a dome team, just because they usually play in decent weather or they're playing inside at AT&T Stadium. And so because of that, because the Cowboys, they also have, that's going to be one of the biggest games monitoring on when the schedule gets released is when is the Buffalo game? Because they play at Buffalo. Is it going to be late in the year? Could be,
Could be moving to Detroit.
Well, that. Yeah, right. So I think he'd want to play early in the year at Philadelphia and probably late in the year at AT&T Stadium against the Eagles. And of course, I say that now because they're healthy. Who knows, like what happens in training camp if there's some injuries that have some guys that obviously, you look at last year's. They would have obviously liked to have Dak for both games and not have to start Cooper Rush at Philadelphia, but injuries happen and things happen. So maybe it's not great to play them early in the season. I know that there's a lot of people that think that they should play other divisions games later in the year, and that's fine. But I think if Jerry had to pick, as long as he get that Philadelphia earlier in the season, I think he'd be fine with whatever week it was.
I mean, I get the NFL's theory with keeping division games late because you're less likely to not care when it's a division game, but it hasn't proven to be true. There's been so many late season Cowboys Eagles game, John, that haven't meant anything for one of the two teams, and it ends up being nothing. And that's kind of disappointing, So for once, I'd like to get both games in the meat of the schedule, but it's not going to happen though. It's just not going to happen.
You're right. I mean, it's been that way for the Cowboys, whether they've closed this season against Philly or New York or Washington. They've just not really, they closed the season last year and laid one of the biggest eggs that I've seen them lay against Washington at Washington. I'm just like, what is this? Like, it was like they didn't even show up for that game going right into the playoffs. It was a head scratcher. You thought that would be one of the best games that they play. And so, the schedule makers try and line it up like that because ultimately what's getting better ratings than Philadelphia, Dallas, and one of them has to win that game to make the playoffs or the division's on the line or something along the line. But it just hasn't worked out that way.
Right. As great as it could potentially be, I weigh that against the fact that several times over the last however many years, the game has been meaningless because one team didn't have to do anything. The other team desperately, no. Unless you can guarantee me they both are 100% in it to win the game. I don't want to see it go to waste. I don't want to see backups playing. I don't want to see the secondary, the JV team out there for either of these two teams. Certainly, we're doing an Eagle perspective show, but I don't like to see the JV play. So sorry, you're not saving it till the last week of the season, Commissioner. If I'm in your ear, I'm telling you that can't happen. But one thing we do know is it's been decades since there's been a repeat champion in the NFC East. You got to go back to the Andy Reid Eagles last time it happened. And the Cowboys a couple of times defending champ. Oops, they didn't win it the year thereafter. It is the Eagles as the defending champion. Does Mike McCarthy mention that at all at any time preseason, right before an Eagles game this year, that we got to wrest this thing back? You can't let the Eagles do it again. They were the last to do it. We're going to let them do it again. It's supposed to be our division. Does McCarthy play that card with his players at all this year?
He might. I don't think he has to, though, just because of the fact that this rivalry is it's in such a good spot right now between the two teams. There's just that genuine dislike, I feel. And both teams know that the other one is their biggest, competition. I understand the Giants made the playoffs last year, but you kind of want to see them do that again. Whereas I just really feel like this whole Cowboys Eagles thing, it really kind of sucked that last year you didn't get to see, Jalen Hurts play against Dak and Dak play against Hurts, and you never got to see them both at full strength. So, if that happens this year, wherever the game's at, I just don't think that you're going to need the extra motivation. I think that both teams look at it as, hey, this division is going to come down to the two of us. And then the other thing is just, I don't know how the Cowboys would need any extra motivation. It's very clear that the Eagles are the favorite right now. They are the hunted, and you shouldn't need any extra motivation for that game. You know what's on the line for that one. So I'm looking forward to it just because of the fact that there is that genuine rivalry that it's really been missing really in the NFC East for a while there. And it seems like it's fully back because however you want to break it down, I just think that it's clear that, the Cowboys, Eagles, Niners have kind of separated themselves in the NFC. I know like there's the, Lions and some other teams that are coming, but I just really think that those three teams are kind of the class of the NFC. And when two of them are in the same division, I just don't think you need any extra motivation there.
At John Machota, follow John on Twitter. Don't hold it against him. Does a tremendous job covering the Dallas Cowboys for The Athletic. About Them Cowboys, his podcast. Also listen to that. John, my last one kind of involves what you're saying. The Eagles are the favorite. Earlier this week, Peter King didn't do him any favors. He was doing his offseason power rankings, and he said, too early, but put 7 categories together. Number 1 alone with the Philadelphia Eagles was the Philadelphia Eagles. Can't find a weakness. I can find a weakness. We can all find a weakness. For the Dallas Cowboys, who I think were in that second tier, which is Super Bowl vibes or something like that, biggest weakness on the Dallas Cowboys from your perspective?
As we sit here today, this isn't my answer, but as we sit here today, they technically don't have a kicker on the roster, so you probably need to address that.
All right, let's cross kicker off because let's cross special teams off.
Yeah, we'll say they'll get like a Robbie Gould or something like that, and they'll be at least okay there. I do have some concerns about that offensive line just because Zach Martin's getting older, Tyron Smith's getting older. You don't really know what you have at left guard. And it's been a position group that, when you're able to stay pretty healthy out of those 5, you usually have a decent amount of success. And since Mike McCarthy's been the head coach, they have just not been able to have that same 5 out there. So I just feel like if you can get that taken care of and you can show up and have a good offensive line, the trickle down from that, I think, will just be incredible. I think the running game will look a lot better. Dak will have a lot more time to get the ball out to Cooks and Lamb and Gallup. And so I think that is the huge question mark for right now is just what are they going to get out of offensive line? New offensive line coach, Mike Solari. There's a lot of moving pieces there that if it isn't, good and they do struggle there, I just think the trickle down of how bad that could be for the rest of the team could be a really bad thing. And I also want to add, John, at least you're getting your new coordinator. We still haven't talked to Brian Schottenheimer yet.
So. Oh, all right.
Okay. Yeah, you'll get your chance coming up in the next couple of days. Maybe weeks. I don't know. I could be talking out my ear hole. Last thing, and we'll lighten it up a little bit here. As a sports talk show host here in Philadelphia, national, everything else, I think it's funny in Philadelphia in that Philadelphia fans love when Rasheed Wallace wears a Flyers jersey at another venue. But God forbid Devontae Smith give a hug to Jason Tatum, who apparently he's friends with when the Celtics and the Sixers are playing. Very hypocritical here in town. You're supposed to be a diehard. So you get drafted by a Philadelphia team, you got to become a 4-for-4 guy and root for all 4 Philly teams. But you former Philly guys who grew up in Philadelphia, you can continue to root for the Philly team. You don't have to join your new team, new town that you're in. It just drives me crazy and continue to do so. Micah Parsons showing up in a Sixer outfit this week. How's that playing down in Dallas?
Not great. This is the thing. Micah Parsons is just such a good player. He's the Cowboys' probably most important player if it's not Dak. And, he just has been so dynamic the first 2 years he's been in the league that I think they'll allow him to pass on it. So they don't love it though. You tweet out the picture of him wearing that and it obviously doesn't go well for him just because of this hate for, Philadelphia. I will say though, I've always felt like the Philadelphia hate for the Dallas is stronger than what the Dallas. It's just weird because Philadelphia is like the fan base is like the city and like this is our city type thing. Whereas like the Cowboys fan base, of course it's in Dallas, but it's just like the Cowboys fans are just so spread out. That's why usually they travel really well because there's just so many that live so many different places. So basically what I'm getting is there's just so many Cowboys fans that, and you guys know this too, they're also Lakers fans and then Yankees fans. You know what I'm saying? So it's a little bit different there. The one thing being a native Metro Detroiter, though, I will say though about Rasheed Wallace, because I'll just never forget, like, his first press conference when he got traded to the Pistons, he was wearing like a Derek Thomas jersey with a Chiefs hat. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know he was a Chiefs fan. So when they were playing the Eagles in the Super Bowl, I'm like, there's no way he's going to be wearing that Chiefs stuff. And sure enough, he did. And I could not believe that he was doing that because I thought he was, complete Philly through and through. So I know that must not have played well in the city either.
Yeah, it's been it creates conversation for me on the phone, so I probably shouldn't complain, but there's a hypocritical nature to it. John Machota, we always appreciate it. Good luck getting your new OC for a press session sometimes in the next couple
now
of
I
weeks.
Can't complain as much. I didn't know that. I thought we were alone. They're hiding Sean Desai. I saw him out in the wild last week during rookie camp, but this will be our first time to speak to him. Yeah.
Johnny,
much Schottenheimer
love.
is offensive coordinator, title wise, but whatever.
Yeah, and we know that the head coach will be calling the plays, which will give you plenty to sink your teeth into during the year. John, thanks much for hopping on board. We're going to get you on as soon as the season rolls back around. Thanks for doing it with us today.
Anytime, guys. I always enjoy it.
Thanks,
John Machota from The Athletic. If you're not an Athletic subscriber, which I am, it's the only one that I'll actually go into pocket to pay for. He does a great job. The Athletic's pretty damn good website, too. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac, Mac and Mac guys coming back to you know what. Put a bow on the show.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
This is Governor Ed Rendell urging you to vote for my friend Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court. I appointed Judge Dugan in 2007 to the Philadelphia Municipal Court, where he now serves as its president judge. Pat is a proud Army veteran of 23 years. He served 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's also recommended by the Philadelphia Bar Association. But most importantly, he bleeds Eagles green and hates those Dallas Cowboys. So get out and vote for number 3, Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court.
Paid for by Dugan 2023.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
All right, Mac and Mac guys, coming back to the blow on the show, and tomorrow should be a good day. You want to be back here tomorrow because not only will we know the rest of the Eagles schedule, but John will be part of the press conference today for the 2 note coordinators. First time they've been made available since they've gotten their new positions. This is an on-the-record session. you're not expecting off the record, not for attribution access thereafter, are you, John?
I'm hoping for it. We'll see. Hopefully we'll get a few minutes. But yeah, I'm hoping.
Yeah, that if you can remember back to Gannon's first press conference.
No.
Yeah, that was not the case, right?
No.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if that were the case for tomorrow. But you can hope, right? Good for you if you're doing the hope thing. Good luck with that. I am looking forward to talking to you tomorrow because you're going to have talked to the two coordinators today. Buddy, I'm back here tomorrow. Are you?
Yeah, win. That's a win. That's a loss. It's coming tomorrow.
Get your printer out if need be. Yes, we'll have some fun with it in 22 hours. That's 2 and 2 here on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.